Broadcasting from the Business RadioX studio in Alpharetta, it's time for ProfitSense with Bill McDermott.
Good morning. Welcome to ProfitSense. This podcast dives into the stories behind some of Atlanta's successful businesses and business owners and the professionals that advise them. We help local business leaders get the word out about the important work they're doing to serve their market, their community, and their profession, as well as discuss current issues that business owners are facing today across a wide variety of industries. I'm your host, Bill McDermott, and this show is presented by the Profitability Coach. When business owners want to increase their profitability, they often don't have the expertise to know where to start or what to do. I leverage my knowledge and relationships in a prior life as a banker to identify the hurdles getting in the way and create a plan to deliver profitability they never thought possible. So we have two great guests on the show today. We're talking about leadership, y'all. Leadership, how to find leaders, how to develop leaders. And so with us today, Beth Miller, who's the president and founder of Executive Velocity. Beth, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
And Eric Handler with Handler, a retained executive search firm. Eric, welcome to ProfitSense.
Great to be here.
So, Beth, we're going to start with you. So, leadership, I've heard a lot of sayings. Leaders are born and not made, and we know that's not true. But let's talk about developing leaders. I've often heard people say that leaders have vision, managers manage a process. I do believe that leaders are made. So talking about developing leaders, what do you find is one of the biggest challenges in developing leaders in today's market?
Well, time, first of all. A lot of people are very, very busy now.
Yeah, that's right.
So getting them to pay attention to the important aspects of leadership is critical. But it's also getting sponsors, those manager leaders who are willing to commit and invest in those upcoming leaders,
right,
is important as well.
And so part of that is probably confronting a certain amount of reality that, I have this leadership gap in my organization. And then because we are so busy, you have to actually create some capacity so that people can continue to develop as leaders. So how do you see that play out in organizations and creating that capacity so leaders can be developed?
Well, part of it is identifying those things that current leaders, can incorporate into their work. So it's not about doing homework.
Right.
It's about action. And, there is some homework involved. When I develop leaders and go through a coaching process, I always try and keep homework to like a less than an hour.
Right.
And then it's about diving into the theory and identifying opportunities on how to apply that theory within the workday. So it's really that application that obviously they have to be cognizant of practicing and building a new behavior, but it's not taking extra time.
Yeah, we're talking this morning with Beth Miller, who's president and founder of Executive Velocity. Beth Miller is an experienced corporate executive, business owner, and entrepreneurial leader with a love for developing talent and seeing others succeed. Beth, on the topic of development, we've talked about creating the time, but what are some of the traits or some of the characteristics that are being developed for leaders?
Well, I think it generally depends on the experience of the leader. I work with a lot of younger leaders, newer leaders that are coming up, and some of them, it's their first leadership opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the common themes I see are like delegation.
Right.
Being able to identify the right person and delegate appropriately, and then build that accountability for feedback so that the person who is being delegated to has the sense and the knowledge of being able to come back to the person the manager and ask questions versus just being quiet. And then all of a sudden the leader's like, well, wait a minute, I told you and delegated to you this, and it's been a week. Why hasn't it happened? Right.
Yeah,
and it's really about understanding how to effectively delegate in an accountable way.
Yeah, and accountability is a topic that we could probably spend the rest of our time together talking about. But I do find that there is a mindset issue around, if I delegate this to someone, I can just kind of wash my hands of it. It's done, and I can kind of move on. But that's so not true.
Exactly, and then there's the opposite, where I find there are some leaders, newer, who will delegate but micromanage the delegation process, which isn't helping that individual that you've delegated to develop.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Before we move off developing leaders, I'm reminded of a quote from Peter Drucker. He said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Developing leaders is also part of how do you build a culture, and how do you get people who want to follow you based on that culture that they're creating.
True, but that starts with hiring the right people. And having the right hiring process internally, where the leaders understand how to do behavioral interviewing, and really understand what are the values that the candidate is bringing to the table that fits with your culture.
Yeah. Another quote I've heard, which resonates, is people hire on skills, but they fire on behavior. Yeah, and so
it's true
that those behavioral questions that you're talking about in the interview are absolutely critical.
Yeah, and that's another area that all leaders need to improve on is interviewing skills. Yeah. A lot of them will go on their gut, that first impression, but it's digging into and understanding how people get things done, not what they got done.
Yeah. So switching on to talk about some of the challenges of succession planning. First of all, I loved your book.
Oh, thank you.
Replaceable, An Obsession with Succession. Mm-hmm. It was so well written. You not only created a system, but also a structure around that. So first, anybody listening that is looking for a great book on succession planning, please look up Replaceable. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon.
It is. It's on Amazon.
And so just well done. I haven't read Are You Talent Obsessed yet, but that's the second book that I think you've written.
Actually, that was the first.
Oh, that was the first. Okay, mm-hmm. So I had them out of order. Well, I look forward to reading that one as well. But let's talk about the challenges of succession planning. What do you see as the number one challenge?
The number one challenge, at least for small, mid-sized companies, is the leader of the organization, and he or she being prepared to step away.
Right.
And if they're not fully engaged in the succession planning process. So I often am working with the business owner to get him or her to understand, what does life look like after they leave? Yeah. What's their plan? Right. And then once that happens, then it's really about understanding the key positions in your organization, not the people, but the positions first. And then taking a look at your strategy and saying, hey, are there other positions 3 to 5 years out that we're going to need to meet that strategy? And then you take a look at the people in the positions. Are they really doing what they need to do? And if not, well, development, right? Or the people below them, are there people that are ready to step into that position? Yep. Should somebody leave, pass away, whatever. So it's not just the business owner succession plan, but it's the whole organization. having that leadership pipeline.
Yeah, and I've also found inertia seems to play into this a lot. If the business owner is at rest with their succession planning, likely they're gonna stay at rest.
Yeah.
So how do you find ways to overcome inertia? Because so many business owners, so it's the baby boomer generation is retiring.
Yeah.
There are going to be hundreds and thousands of baby boomers that are going to be exiting their businesses.
Yeah.
Studies, I think, show that very few have done any kind of significant planning.
That's correct.
So how do you overcome inertia to get them engaged in the process?
Generally, I don't. It's usually the people that come to me have come to the conclusion that they need to start planning. Now, some of them came to the conclusion too late. For instance, there was a gentleman that I was working with up in Chicago. He was 70 years old, and he wanted to retire in the next year. I'm like, you have no succession plan. The people below you, you have nobody below you that can take your position over. You should have started this 5 years ago. I can't help you. I mean, it's too late.
Yeah, excellent point. We're talking with Beth Miller, president and founder of Executive Velocity. Since 2009, Executive Velocity has been providing talent solutions custom designed to develop a robust leadership pipeline for your organization. And Beth, continuing on the theme of succession planning, if someone hasn't done any planning and needs to start, kind of how do they start and where do they start?
Well, in my book, the first chapter or second chapter is really about assessing your organization as to whether or not it's ready to go through a succession planning process. Because there's certain things that need to be in place before you do that. There needs to be a system of identifying high potentials. Mm-hmm. What does a high potential look like? You need to identify key positions. You need to have career conversations. There are all these processes that really need to be in place before you go through a succession planning process.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about the high potentials. And so how do you, and I think if I remember the book correctly, the high potentials are people that are constantly engaged. I would say maybe a characteristic is they're drivers. They're lifelong learners. They're always looking at continuous improvement. And so if I'm on with that definition, how do you find those high potentials in your organization?
Well, obviously, if the smaller your organization, the easier it's going to be, right? The larger the organization, you really need to have a process in place and clearly define what a high potential looks like, because there are going to be people. You've got to be really transparent about the process of succession planning, and there'll be people that may feel like they're a high potential but aren't. And you need to have that conversation with them on this is what our organization looks for in a high potential.
Sure.
Right. So, because the high potentials are the ones that are going to get some extra development opportunities, right? They're the ones that will have, get special projects, or because they're high potential, they'll probably even go out and seek special projects. They're the ones that want the opportunities. They're not going to wait for the opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. And I've also seen even a lot of organizations with 40, 50, maybe even 60 employees really don't have a organized professional development program.
That's true.
I'm finding that there aren't really career development conversations that are taking place. A lot of times, some of these organizations don't even have a fully dedicated human resource person.
Yeah.
And so how do you go about helping them develop those structures and systems in place so that they can be successful in their succession planning process?
So it depends on the size. A 50, 60 employee company is a leadership program, development program really is not going to financially make sense to them. So coaching is where I would come in and identify the core competencies that are required for leaders in the organization, do a 360 assessment, identify the gaps, and put together a development plan of basically 3 objectives that we would work over a year's time in developing. Now, a larger organization, I worked with a company down in Florida where they were about 300 employees, and we created a leadership certification program. So we identified 5 key competencies that they wanted all of their young leaders to have. It was coaching, communications, what was the other ones? Coaching, communications, accountability, and it was a couple of years ago. So, but you choose those and then build around.
Yeah. What a great way to think about it, having a certification program.
Yeah.
And that leads into another topic I wanted to explore with you. Coaching is really a core leadership skill.
Definitely, yes.
And so I'm going back to maybe my own journey when I was in banking management. So I think I had a pretty decent IQ. I saw my EQ as suffering a little bit. So Daniel Goleman's book Primal Leadership really helped me develop a little better EQ. But coaching is as much about listening.
Yes.
And not only listening, but actually taking an active role in confirming or paraphrasing actually what the person is saying. And I think that's where you come in as a valuable resource to coach those future leaders. In addition to the company in Florida, does a particular story come to mind where you've really seen the change occur over time?
Yeah, there was a company up in Philadelphia that they've since sold, but they were about 40 employees, and they wanted their leaders to get some development. So it was a combination of coaching and group coaching because there were themes there that they were all working on. So we would get together in a group and share their best practices, like coaching, for instance. But I was originally brought in because there was one high potential who had an issue, and they wanted her to get past it, and it was an EQ issue, and we worked through it. One of the things that I realized about her and some of the other people that I work with, if they're highly goal oriented, they're really going to put the effort in. And she, I stretched her, but got her to try some things that she didn't think were going to work, but they did. And so she got some quick wins, and eventually, 2 years later, she was reporting to the president.
Wow!
Yeah!
Wow! Yeah. That is awesome. So. One of the things I wanted to also talk about is in the idea of coaching. It seems to me that having a growth mindset, as well as being a lifelong learner, really plays at some of the core of coaching.
Yes.
What's been your experience there?
Yeah, the growth mindset to me is it's being able to think outside the box and not have those barriers, but you have them, but you question them. Right. And oftentimes what will happen when I'm working with individuals, they have some sort of mental block. And I'll ask them the question, well, where's the data? And they'll stop. Well, and they can't come up with, something specific that ties to their belief. It's just something in the past,
right?
Not in the present.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm thinking that your prior experience as a Vistage chair has really helped you in terms of coaching these leaders and developing them. How have you found drawing on that prior experience has helped you become the great coach that you are?
I think just a lot of different experiences and a lot of different personalities that I worked with, and from each one of the experiences, learning, and taking something away.
Yeah. So I want to ask you. I know there's going to be some listeners that are leadership development, talent development is heavy on their minds. What is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, through my website, which is executive-velocity.com, or on LinkedIn, where you can find me as Beth Armknecht Miller.
Well,
the only one.
Yeah, I share, William McDermott is there's two of us, and the other one that used to be, and I'm trying to remember, I think he's with a service company, but anyway, he was formerly with SAP. He ranks higher than me in the Google rankings, but he doesn't rank for the profitability coach. But anyway, well, Beth, it has been great having you. You've got a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom, and thank you for coming on and sharing that here at ProfitSense today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Bill.
And so, continuing our conversation with leadership and finding those leaders out in the marketplace, Eric Handler is joining us with Handler. And Eric, I really want to first talk about Handler. You've got a very unique position in the marketplace. I'd like to hear kind of the Handler story, maybe focusing on your uniqueness in the market. What are some of the core values and the core focus? I think it's cool that you have a BHAG. I'm wondering if you'd share your BHAG as well. So thanks for coming on today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. Well, I could talk for hours about the Handler story. It actually started with my father back in 1977. He started our firm when retained executive search really wasn't a big industry at the time. Recruiting wasn't a big industry. And so I've kind of got born into the business, you could say.
Yeah. So second generation. What's been your experience coming in and following the lead, but also putting your thumbprint on the organization?
Yeah. Well, for anyone that's out there listening and they're part of a family business, we could probably go off onto the side, have a cup of coffee, and talk a lot about the different stories that can happen. But I'm proud to say that our relationship with my dad is better than it's ever been, and that was always a great thing by coming into the business. We've had I'm the third leader in our firm. Okay. And certainly I've had to grow into the fact that how my father started the business and built the business is going to be different than how I've done it. And so I've had to get very comfortable in my leadership and my style as we continue to grow into the future.
Sure. And there is a uniqueness that Handler offers in the marketplace. Could you go into that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I mean, it starts with our history. We've been here in the market here in Atlanta for almost 45 years.
Wow.
We're the longest still standing executive search firm. So it speaks to the network that we've developed. It's really unprecedented. It's an honor to be a part of it. And so that's a big part of our uniqueness. And as a result, about 90% of our business is really right here in our own backyard where we're doing executive search and working with organizations. And then I would say finally, we're really focused on the fit and the vision of an organization to help them identify leaders that are truly worth following within their business, because we recognize how much of a difference that can make into their business.
Yeah, and I'm going to go down a tangent on that, because I think while the topic is leadership, the comment that you made, finding leaders worth following, I love that. Talk a little bit about how you find those leaders that are worth following.
Well, that phrase I copy just like everything else, so I can't claim it, but it's a wonderful thing within a business because I think there's a very big difference between a leader and a leader worth following, you know? And so we believe that a leader worth following is a difference maker. And we have a process for identifying that. And we think it works really well. It's a joy for us to be able to go back into an organization 4 or 5 years later and talk to that candidate at the time and to see how they've flourished and grown in their career and to see what kind of difference they've made in the organization because of the impact.
Yeah, that's got to be incredibly gratifying. And of course, I love your BHAG. Would you share that with our listeners?
Absolutely. We love that as well. And it's why we do what we do. And that's to impact 5,000 lives by 2025.
Wow. Wow.
Something that we started in September of 2019. We're at 1,049. You see that sign over my shoulder all the time.
Uh-huh.
And it's just an exciting thing for us to realize that the work that we do really, truly impacts a life, not only for the candidate, but for the hiring manager that comes in, that hires that individual.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great BHAG. And of course, for our listeners, I have to be sure BHAG is Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. If you've never heard that term, and Eric and Handler want to impact 5,000 lives, I have no doubt you'll get there, Eric.
We plan on it.
We're talking this morning with Eric Handler, CEO of Handler. Handler's an Atlanta-based retained executive search and RPO firm. They find the difference makers in Atlanta for the company vision that they're hiring for. And they've managed over 4,000 searches over a 44-plus year history. Eric, one of the things that I know you and I have talked about recently is wanting to serve the CFO community in America, or not in America, in Atlanta. And you're in the process of building a private network of executives and CFOs in Atlanta. Talk a little bit about the inspiration for that, and then how's it going?
Yeah, Bill, we're really excited about that, and we just felt like there would be a benefit to the community to develop a private network specifically of Atlanta-based CFOs. From our research, we think there's about 577 of them out there.
Wow. And
plus or minus a couple, but we'll discover that over time. And so we're actively looking for and identifying CFOs that work and live here in Atlanta and really serve that community. And so we've just began that venture. It's going extremely well. We're super excited just because of the needs that CFOs have in the marketplace. You know, they're in a real unique position.
They are.
As you know better than I do. And I'm learning by putting together our first group of CFOs that they just have this unique role in an organization to be a jack of all trades. Mm-hmm. And so it's really super exciting for us.
I've found too, generalizations are always true, but never correct. But accounting is usually underappreciated in an organization and usually underfunded as a result. So I can see a real benefit of having a network of CFOs that can collaborate and discuss issues. Plus, by building that community, you're telling them that you appreciate them and you want to be sure that they're acknowledged for the work that they do. So kudos to you about that. If someone is interested in trying to find out a little bit more about that network, what's the best way for them to tap into that? Should they contact you? Is there a website that they can go to?
Sure. Yeah. If you're a CFO in Atlanta or know a CFO in Atlanta, they can just call me directly.
Okay.
My number is 770-434-2044. Or they can shoot me an email, which is just my name, eric@handler.com. And we'd be happy to learn a little bit more about them and their background and what they're looking for to see if it's a good fit for our group, and would love to get them tied into some other CFOs.
So That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to go and talk a little bit about relationships. Friend of mine, Greg Burkhalter, is the LinkedIn guy, and his tagline is relationships first. But everything that we do in work and really in life is about relationships, and since it's about people, it is personal. Talk about how you incorporate the role of relationships in everything that you do at Handler. And also, I do want to spend some time talking about some of the characteristics of relationships, like authenticity and empathy and things like that.
Yeah, there's some big ideas within that, and I think it's really appropriate that the topic of leadership is for today, especially as it relates to relationships. I remember the first book on leadership that I read. I was 30 years old. It set me off on my journey of learning. And I think as I've grown in my leadership, and by the way, that book was by John Maxwell, the 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership.
Okay.
That was such a good one. And
I haven't read that one, so thank you for that.
There you go. And I think, in essence, as I've grown in my leadership and my capabilities or competencies, it's helped me tremendously in my ability to be in relationships with people. I remember early on in my journey thinking to myself how I've become a better son, a better brother, a better father, and a better coworker, just simply because of me learning more and investing more in myself about how to become a better leader.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of another book called The Heart-Led Leader, and it's by a gentleman named Tommy Spalding. And authenticity is one of those traits of heart-led leaders. And I'm wondering, when you're looking in your search process, how do you identify those traits like authenticity as part of the hiring process?
It's a great question. And that's why I love our business so much, because we get to hear so many stories. You have the opportunity to either get on the telephone or do a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting, and you get to hear about people's careers and people's stories. And over time, as a search consultant, you begin to develop a knack pretty quickly as to whether or not you're getting the real story or the not so real story. And so authenticity plays a huge role in what we do.
Yeah. So I don't often tell this, but my career actually started, I had this great education from Wake Forest University, but my first position is I was the repo man for the auto dealer section of a large bank in North Carolina. So I had to go door to door collecting past due loans and repossessing the cars if they couldn't pay. Now, thank goodness I'm not in that line of work anymore. My wife was concerned she was going to be the youngest widow ever, but you do learn about relationships in that process as well. Oh,
sounds like a crash course in relationships right there.
We could go on about that, but I'm gonna get back. So, personal development. I know we talked about that earlier with Beth, but talk a little bit about why personal development is so important in becoming that leader worth following.
Yeah. Well, First, I would say that I've experienced it myself. I've experienced what personal development can do for me, first as a person and as a husband. The impact of just getting better as a human being on this planet is an awesome thing.
Right.
To be a better friend. And so, as I mentioned, when that journey started and I started to learn that my real learning happened after school, from reading books and improving on myself, that we've made it a big part of what Handler is all about. And after all, if we're to recruit great leaders, it starts with us. We have to be great leaders.
Sure.
And so we've created what we call the leadership journey at Handler. It's an opportunity to spend some real one-on-one time with each one of our team members to ask them, what's important for you? What do you want in your leadership journey? Because we're all on one.
Right.
And whether we want to grow it or not is another topic for discussion. We're going to assume that the people at Handler are wanting to grow in their journey.
Sure.
And so how can we support them in that journey?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that they can be as valuable an individual to society as they possibly can. Because if we focus on that not only is Handler going to benefit, but our clients are going to benefit, their family is going to benefit. And so we just call it the leadership journey.
Yeah.
That's what it is, a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you and I in prior discussions have talked about living a life of focus, what you tend to see in your mind's eye, what you think about, you tend to bring about. So talk a little bit about living a life of focus, what that's been like maybe on your leadership journey, whether it's personal or professional.
Wow. Well, I think about what Beth said earlier, and that is the challenge of time.
Yep.
Because we don't have much of it. And then I think about focus. And then I think about all the distractions in the world today. Like, how do you focus on anything, right?
Really?
But for me, and when I think about focus, I think about really thinking about my future. And I think about what's important for me in my future as a business owner, as an employer, as a father, all of the different facets in my life. What do I think about those as it relates to my future?
Sure.
And I create some goals around that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do my very best to think about that and to write about that. And the more I can do it and the more I can think about it, it's crazy how this works, but the more I end up focusing on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not unusual for maybe a month to go by and I'm like, what am I working towards again? What's my future look like? And I got to bring myself back
right.
to center to say, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so it's really a more of a tension to manage than a problem to solve as it relates to focus. Right.
Right. I've been told by several that they journal, and journaling is a way for them to maintain focus. I'm not a journaler, but I can certainly see the benefit of doing that if someone chose to. I think living that life of focus also plays a role in personal development and on the leadership journey. So not only with your coworkers, but also with the people that you're finding those leaders that are worth following. How do you look for focus in their lives as part of maybe a recommendation for hiring?
Yeah, well, we have a process that we call the top talent candidate predictor. It's about 10 different variables. 3 are driven by our client needs. 7 are pretty standard for us. And we've got to create some kind of a true north that we know represent future success. And we really try to recruit towards that. So as we're in conversations with our candidates, we're kind of having an ear to some of the things that they're sharing, maybe some of the stories that they talk about, some of their experiences, some of the things that they're interested in the future. You might be in this particular role today, but you can tell that they were born into it and they really don't like it. And those are telltale signs that, maybe this is not the right person for the job. But having some kind of a true north in terms of the characteristics that you're seeking relative to a specific role are really important for us as we evaluate candidates.
Sure. Well, there's a war out there for talent, which could be another entire topic of conversation, Eric. But I do want to be sure, again, for those that are looking for talent, for those that you feel like you could provide a really valuable service, share with any listeners that might be wanting to engage someone in a retained executive search. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Just call me. My telephone number is 770-434 888-888-2044. They can shoot me an email. My email is just my name. It's eric@handler.com. And if they just simply want to learn a little bit more about what we're doing in the marketplace, they can go to handler.com. They can visit our company page on LinkedIn and follow some of the blog posts and stories that we put up there regularly. So any one of those ways, depending upon the level of interest, would be great.
Yeah. Eric, it's been a delight to have you on ProfitSense today, and thank you for sharing not only your journey, but how you help clients find the leaders for their journey as well.
Well, Bill, thanks so much for having me. It's been an honor.
I'd like to take a moment to express some gratitude. This month, the Profitability Coach celebrates our 14th anniversary. Started in 2009, we went from helping business owners negotiate bank loans at the height of the Great Recession to helping them interpret their financial statements, taking them from financial confusion to financial clarity, and grow into the company of their dreams. Every business owner has big dreams for their business. They want to do everything they can to make it happen. Unfortunately, many are so busy working in the business, they don't take time to work on the business. From the beginning, our mission has been to help business owners become better financial managers and understand what levers to pull to drive profitability and growth. Our success would not have been possible without the relationships we've built with our trusted business partners and wonderful clients, both past and present. And for that, we thank you. Your faith in us and collaboration has allowed us to help hundreds of business owners achieve profitability they never thought possible. As our world has shifted and needs arise, we're proud to have added services such as financial health checkups and business succession and exit planning. This has allowed us to provide clients with a full array of services, from understanding their current financial standing to learning how best to grow their company, to exiting their business with a sense of accomplishment and peace, knowing it will continue on successfully. Again, thank you to everyone who's made our success possible. Here's to many more profitable years ahead. If you want to keep up with the latest in pro-business news, follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram at The Profitability Coach. If you want to listen to past or future ProfitSense episodes, you can find us on ProfitSenseRadio.com. This is ProfitSense with Bill McDermott signing off. Make it a great day.